Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching Kentucky Sports Television. I'm Thomas Beisner. A freshman offensive tackle TJ Jones was arrested Friday in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on weapons charges. According to the incident report, Jones was carrying a gun on school property, and allegedly the incident occurred in the locker room of Myrtle Beach High School, where Jones played when he was in high school. Joined by Leslie Neely. Leslie, this is kind of a downer after a lot of good football news. He was not a contributor, not a big-time player. I think a lot of people didn't even know who he was when this came out. But how serious of an incident is this, and what kind of punishment do you think is going to come along with it?
Well, the details seem kind of sketchy about it. It wasn't reported till 3 days after it supposedly happened. You know, it was at his home high school. He is one of those guys. He redshirted, but he's 6'6", 290. He could be an impact player later on. So I think this is a big test for Mark Stoops. This is the first difficulty he's run into. He's at a conference. But I think depending on how he reprimands him is going to set the tone for what this team is going to take Stoops as.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because this is the first real, major incident he's going to have to deal with. And I don't think, the perception of a lot of programs is that good players, you cut them some slack. Guys who aren't contributors, you don't cut them some slack. I don't know how it's going to be under Stoops, how it's going to be, but he seems like this is going to be, so there's going to be a pretty serious punishment that comes along with it. And TJ Jones, you think when Terrence Jones was there, like that was so distracting for him, like people confused him?
When I first read it, I was like, TJ Beisner, what? Yeah. You got weapons charge now?
I'm too clumsy to own any weapons. I'd hurt myself. Now, after about a 6-hour delay, UK football target Ben Bradley finally announced on Twitter yesterday that he's going to be taking his talents to Auburn next season. He was down to Auburn in Kentucky. He's a junior college defensive tackle that we talked a little bit about yesterday. Let's say he's a guy that could plug the middle. Would have been a huge addition to Kentucky. How much, if missing out on him, how much of a loss is that?
I think people were really disappointed. I think they were really excited just to have a player like this on the map, wanting to go to Kentucky. And I think he had a really difficult decision. He did postpone that. But I have to say, if you're going to go to Auburn, it's Auburn University. Don't announce it as University of Auburn. But I think, he is a good player. I think he's going to make an impact. But props to Mark Stoops and his staff for at least getting him on the map.
Right. They're making a play with all these junior college guys because they can conceivably play immediately and get in there. Defensive line is an area of relative strength for Kentucky, not maybe relative to the SEC. They don't have the best defensive line. So it's, hey, you miss out on a guy, not a big deal. You can, move on from that, and there are a number of other players that are coming to visit this weekend. But the fact, like you said, that they're considering this four-star guy, that he's in the mix, Kentucky's actually making a fight. It came down to Auburn. I mean, yesterday we talked about maybe he'll go to Kentucky. That's a win. That's a win for the Cats, right?
Definitely.
Now, in 2 days, the Wildcats will travel down to Nashville to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. So far this season, Vandy has a 6-6 record with an overtime win against Xavier being the highlight. Thursday's game will be a rematch of the SEC championship game, last year's tournament, which the Cats lost 64-71. And on a teleconference call, Vanderbilt head coach Kevin Stallings said Kentucky's defense is always a problem every single year for opposing coaches.
They're always very good defensively. It doesn't matter who shows up in the uniforms. John always has them very well prepared and very efficient defensively and on the boards. And they're just I would kind of consider them a typical Kentucky team, long, athletic.
Leslie, every year for 5, 6, maybe longer, 7, 8 years, this Vanderbilt game, it's usually later in the season, and it's a huge game for Kentucky, a real challenge for them to see where they are. This year's Vanderbilt team is terrible. Everybody left, everybody graduated. They have a couple of guys, Odom, Johnson can score a little bit. They don't really have any height. They have, I think, Josh Henderson 6'11". The rest of the guys are about 6'6". So Kentucky's going to have a significant height advantage, significant talent advantage. But going into Vanderbilt, first road trip for them, seems like a good test to still see where they are.
I mean, it's one of those things that playing in Memorial, no matter who they're playing, it's a tough place to play. And I think it's going to show if this team is built to play road games. I mean, they played at Louisville. They did really surprisingly well there. But I think this is just one of those different environments. And it's odd that they're playing so early in the season, too.
Yeah. And Vanderbilt has become essentially I mean, they're going to finish probably close to the bottom of the SEC, and that's not a program where you reload. And so it's a big transition. These guys are going to have to get experience. getting a win against Kentucky, a team that has holes, would be huge for them. I think it's going to be a great challenge to see how they respond to that environment. I think Kentucky's going to blow them out. I mean, I see them just running up and down, the length being too much defensively and offensively.
I sure hope they do. And I know all these coaches are like, this is a rematch of the SEC championship. None of these guys care about that. They're so young. They're like, when was that? I don't care. So it's more about just going there and playing hard.
Now, in preparation for that game on Thursday, John Calipari watched all 3 of last year's games with the Commodores, and Coach Cal said every game was a tough one.
I've watched all 3 games that we played with Vandy last year just to touch up on, how we played them, how they played us. All 3 games were wars. We happened to win 2. We could have lost all 3, or we could have won all 3. But they were wars. And so, I expect nothing less than that going up. I imagine it'll be sold out. It'll be a great crowd.
The crowd is always a big deal for them. We know that it's going to be like that everywhere Kentucky goes. I think Kentucky's players will respond. I mean, Vanderbilt hasn't been challenged at all. I mean, they have not had anything close to this type of environment playing a talent of a team like Kentucky. Who do you want to see, though, be the most critical? I mean, Alex Poythress is the guy Vanderbilt recruited. Who's the most important guy in this game for you?
Well, I think this is a big game for Alex Poythress. He's going back to his home state. This is the first time he's been there since putting on the Kentucky jersey. But I do think Ryan Harrow, I keep going back to him. I saw a term that I like, the floor general. I think he's going to have to do that. He's got to run all the players, show them what to do, where to go, and just be more of that leader. And I think he's stepping into that role. But that combined with Alex Poythress just being really out there and going hard.
You're not the only one that thinks Ryan Harrow is most important. That was a perfect transition. Ryan Harrow's been growing, of course, by leaps and bounds. Calipari said that he's become more of a vocal leader on the court, building bonds with his teammates, becoming the guy that everyone loves and can count on. Take a listen to what he had to say.
The team trusts him more now. He's spending a lot of time around his teammates in practice. He's one of our hardest workers now. He's got a great attitude. When we're doing individual work with the players, the guys have to stay in the morning. He and Archie do theirs before practice. I grab those 2 and we go out for 20 minutes prior to practice, 25 minutes. Well, he stays in the gym in the mornings and cheers on the guys. Just talks to them and encourages them. He's become that guy that we needed him to be. But you got to be around the team. You got to be around them. You got to be with them. They got to know you're for them. And then they'll follow. Then you can lead. Leading is not just walking on the court and barking orders. Leadership is about service. And the only way you can serve others is be around them. And that's what he's been able to do. And I'm really proud of how far he's come.
Now, Harrow's growth is part of Kentucky improving as they get ready for the postseason. ESPN's John Gassaway listed the Cats as one of his dark horses for the national championship this season. And it's weird to call them a dark horse because at the beginning of the season they were predicted, Leslie, to be in that mix for a national championship. Now you've seen, I don't understand the rankings. I feel like this team is a good team, not great yet, but they're a whole lot better than a lot of the 16 to 25 teams, a lot of the teams that are in that mix. They just haven't won a big game since Maryland. How much of a title contender do you think Kentucky is right now? And when SEC is all said and done, how much do you expect them to be? I
think it's so hard to say right now if they're actually going to be able to get even to the Final Four. I think it's that, like you said in that article, it's going to come down to they have a lot of talent, but they're young. And it's one of those that, is that going to outweigh one or the other in these big crucial games? And I think playing through SEC is going to get them prepared a lot more, but that tournament setting is so crucial, and especially for young guys, it's going to be interesting to see if they can handle that.
Yeah, they have a lot to prove. And the bracketology today came out, Joe Lunardi's has them as a 7 seed. So between now and then, they can climb, they can fall. Who knows what's going on.